So in the last lecture, we understood as to what is a feedback and how to give a feedback and how to receive it. So in total, the agenda of this lecture was to discuss what is a feedback, effects of feedback, types of feedback, how to give constructive feedback, characteristics to be possessed while giving feedback effectively, how to effectively receive effective feedback, and characteristics to be possessed while receiving feedback effectively. Of all the topics that are given here, we have already discussed in the previous lecture as to what is a feedback, what are the effects of feedback, what are the types of feedback, and how are you supposed to give a constructive feedback. So this lecture will target on the last 3 points, that is characteristics to be possessed while giving a feedback effectively, how to effectively receive an effective feedback, and characteristics that you need to possess while receiving feedback effectively. Let us now try and understand as to what are the characteristics that are to be possessed while you're giving the feedback. So whosoever is giving the feedback, what exactly is desired of that individual while the person is giving a feedback? Let us now discuss those. The person who's giving the feedback needs to be realistic. Direct your comments towards matters which can be worked on. There can be n number of things for which you want to give your feedback. There are certain things that are feasible, that are viable, you can do those things. There are certain things that are absolutely non-feasible, you cannot do it. Therefore, try to limit your comments, your feedback to only those things that can be worked on. Do not take all the negatives, because at times it so happens that the negative is so negative that we cannot work upon it. Therefore, be realistic, realize, try to analyze that what feedback of yours will be helpful for the person, what will be that something that can be worked on. Only include those things in your feedback. Be realistic. Be realistic means do not just speak for the sake of speaking. You need to understand. Be realistic means you need to realize what can be worked on and what cannot be, what is a viable solution that you're trying to give, and what is something that cannot be achieved or cannot be done. So be realistic in your approach while you're giving a feedback. Be specific. Generalizations are particularly unhelpful. If you're generalizing on the topic, you don't have to do that, because the moment you generalize, the person will not be able to understand clearly as to what is the person giving me the feedback for. How and where do I improve? So base the feedback on concrete observable behavior. Do not go for abstract things. Be specific in your approach. Hit the bullseye. Be sensitive. As a person who's giving the feedback, do not feel that yes, you have the authority to give the feedback so you can speak anything and everything. No, it is not like that. Be sensitive, because anyways when you're giving a feedback, you are wanting somebody to improve. Means the moment you give a feedback, that somebody already knows that yes, that somebody is at fault here or there. So in case you're not thoughtful in your comments and tone, that might hurt or offend the person who's receiving the feedback, which will mar the complete essence of giving a feedback. You had put in a lot of effort to make that feedback, to observe some areas that were gray, which needed improvement, but because you had used a tone that was rough, rude, impolite, or maybe you were sounding too authoritative, therefore, and the person maybe was very sensitive to have understood the real meaning behind the feedback, he would have in that case misunderstood your intentions, and all your efforts were in vain. Therefore, be sensitive while you're giving a feedback. Be descriptive in your approach. Don't be evaluative. Don't evaluate things. Be descriptive here would mean that whatever the thing is for which you need to give a feedback, for which you want the person to improve on, only describe that. Do not try to be evaluative. Do not evaluate as if you could have done this, this would have happened. Don't do that. Nobody needs that advice, right? Only because if you're telling me that, ma'am, had you maybe taught this particular topic prior to the topic that you discussed in the last to last class, now I've already done those things, absolutely your feedback would not make sense to me. Try to be descriptive as to, don't evaluate me that I would have given you 10 out of 10 if you had taken this topic before. No, try to be descriptive as in, had you taken this topic before, it would have been easier for us to understand that last topic, because it was more or less related to feedback. So this is how you need to be descriptive in your approach. Now here, when I say descriptive, I do not mean that you need to stretch beyond points. That is something that is to be avoided. Stick to the limit. Put yourself into the shoes of the other party, empathize, try to understand what exactly is the person wanting to listen from you as a feedback, and only the things that you feel that will be welcomed by the other party who's receiving the feedback, only give those things and describe the things clearly. Why is a description needed here? Because unless you describe what you're trying to say, for which thing that you're giving a feedback for, unless you're descriptive on that, the people would not understand anything. It might be that the people are living in their own kind of dream, in their own imaginative world, wherein they feel that they are the superior most. For to those people, if you're giving a feedback, it will go in vain. Therefore, be descriptive only wherever it is required, and do not be evaluative, do not be judgmental. Do not be judgmental happens to be the next point here. Offer your personal view. Whatever you feel personally has to be offered. Do not act as an authority, even if you are one somewhere else. Suppose I am an authority here in Graphicera and I am giving this feedback to somebody who's not from Graphicera, and maybe I'm a top shot here. Suppose. So I'm a top shot here, and if I'm giving a feedback to somebody else who's not a part of this organization, he does not cares about it. He doesn't bother about who am I. So I don't have to make myself be felt authoritative. I do not have to act in that way. The moment I act authoritative, that person who's receiving a feedback will withdraw himself or herself and will not take the feedback properly. Give your personal reactions rather than value laden statements, because nobody prefers those value laden statements, right? So restrict to the personal kind of experiences and reactions. Do not be overvalued. Do not show that you have a lot of values in yourself and then show that this is how the things should have been done. That should word is ideal, you should always avoid it. Characteristics to be possessed while giving feedback. Now, we don't have to compare. Treat each person's work or as his or her own work, not some part of a competition with others. If you're giving a particular feedback to somebody, don't compare that somebody's work with somebody else's, because it is not a part of competition. Treat that whatever the person has done for which you're giving a feedback to that person, it is his work. Whatever, to the best of understanding of his, whatever to the best of intellect of his, the person has already done the work. If you start comparing his work with somebody else's work, he will not bother to listen to what feedback are you giving. So don't compare the person's work with anybody else's work. Stick to that particular person's work and then give a feedback of yours on that work, not against the person but against the work. Be diligent in your approach. Check your responses. Is it an accurate reflection of what you want to express? Is something that is to be well understood and analyzed before giving the feedback. You need to understand and make yourself satisfied with the fact that yes, this will be a valued feedback for somebody, and this way I will be truthful to myself as an evaluator. Have you perceived the contribution accurately or not is something again that will add on to being diligent. Try to perceive the contribution that the other party is making properly first, and then only try to give the feedback. Be direct in your approach, no beating around the bush. Say what you mean. Don't wrap it up, don't sugarcoat it with fancy words. Be positive in your approach. Say what you appreciate. Don't say some things that are negative about people, because you're giving a constructive feedback. You need to always understand that, so the feedback that you're giving is constructive, so you need to appreciate the good things, and whatever the bad things be that you don't appreciate, don't ever say that I don't appreciate this. You can always put it as you can improve upon these areas by doing these things. You just not only have to let the person know that this is where you're going wrong, you also need to give corrective measures. That is how your feedback will be put as a constructive feedback. And then be aware. Be aware means know to your own emotional state before giving feedback. You should not be too stressed, you should not be too excited or nervous about something. Keep your cool, keep yourself composed and calm, and only then, while you are all composed, can you give a feedback. Otherwise, that emotional state of yours might compel you to say something that you don't want to. So these are the certain characteristics that you have to possess while you're giving a feedback. Characteristics to be possessed while receiving feedback. Be explicit in your approach. Make it clear what kind of feedback are you seeking. In case you're a party who's soliciting the response, the feedback, make sure on what thing are you wanting the feedback. If necessary, indicate what kinds of feedback you do not want to receive. This will help the person who has to give the feedback to make it clear to himself that this is something that I have to give a feedback for, and this is something that I need to refrain from. Be attentive whenever you are asking for a feedback, or whenever there is somebody who's giving the feedback to you. Be attentive, listen to the person carefully, take time, give that person your all your time to listen to what the person has to say, because the person has prepared the feedback after a lot of effort, after putting a lot of time to it. Therefore, you need to take time to listen, to understand, and to consider what is being said by rephrasing and being interested in the other person's point of view. So, whatever the person has said, whatever the feedback that has been given to you, rephrase it. Put it in your own words as per your understanding. Tell the person that is this what you meant to say. And when the person says that yes, this is exactly what I meant to say, that means now you have got the complete feedback, right? Ask for suggestions on how to enhance your practice and grow professionally. That is what the motive of this feedback thing is. You need to improve upon. How will you be improving? Only when you ask for suggestions, only when you ask that how what are the means and ways in which I can improve upon. Try considering what your peer people, they feel about you. Only when you know that this is what they feel about you, will you be able to improve upon yourself as a professional and a personal way. Be aware again. Notice your own reactions. If somebody is giving you your feedback, don't frown in front of him. Don't show the person that you don't welcome this kind of feedback. There has to be a check on that. So notice your reactions, both intellectual and emotional. Don't let the party feel that okay, you're more intelligent than the other party, and don't give a suppose you're giving me a positive feedback that ma'am, you need to improve upon these, and if I start crying on that feedback, I'm too emotional, would mean you will not give that kind of feedback to me in future, because you know that okay, she'll start crying, she's a crybaby. So don't do that. Be aware of your intellectual and your emotional state while receiving the feedback. Be aware of your reactions of rejections or censorship on your part. If you feel that whatever the feedback the person is giving is something that is not correct, you and maybe you feel rejecting that feedback, you don't have to show the reactions, right? So beware of showing those kind of reactions also. Be silent means when the person is talking, let the person talk. Refrain from making a at times when you're giving me a feedback, suppose there'll be an urge to defend myself. Don't be defensive. Be silent, refrain from making a response, because let the other party speak. Only when you let the party speak will you be able to know what are the areas that you need to work upon. Don't be distracted by the need to explain is something that has to be done. With this, we come to the end of this topic, which is giving and receiving feedback. Very quickly, a brief of whatever things that we've discussed, do's and don'ts of giving feedback and receiving feedback. Do's will be start with a positive feedback, be specific about problems that you're hitting at, ask other person their opinion, focus on things that can be improved, and focus on facts. While receiving feedback, the do's will be ask for examples, ask for ways in which you could improve, acknowledge valid points, appreciate the person, thank the person for giving that kind of feedback that the person is giving. Don'ts of giving a feedback: don't exaggerate much. Don't be generally with problems, be specific with it. Don't start the sentences with you. Always put it as a generic thing there. Try don't talk for too long. People who don't have that kind of time to listen to you for long period of time. Be careful when giving advice directly if not asked for. Avoid should. As I said, should is an ideal word. The moment you say you should means you're in some other zone, right? So avoid should. And what you don't have to do while you're receiving a feedback, you don't have to be defensive at all. It is not a hit on you personally. It is because the person is giving that feedback to improve upon you, so that you can improve upon in your performance and in your quality, in your services, etc. So don't be defensive. Take the feedback graciously, take the feedback very gently, don't be defensive at all, and welcome, appreciate people who are giving a genuine feedback to you. And with this, we come to the end of this lecture. Thank you so much. I hope you have understood each and every concept that we've discussed during these two lectures on giving and receiving feedback. Have a good day ahead.